Hey friends, and welcome to this new video. We finally made it! Yesterday, Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 released, and just like we expected, it brought a lot of twists. Some things were confirmed, while others opened up new questions. One of the biggest reveals is about the prototype. For the first time, we saw what it really looks like, its actual physical appearance, and this changes how we can interpret the entire story. However, I already made a video dedicated to the prototype reveal in Chapter 5, and that is the previous video before this one. In this video, I want to do something different. I want to focus on a confirmation that Chapter 5 gave us very clearly. Chapter 6. In fact, the ending does not close the story, it actually does the opposite. It leaves important elements open, introduces details that seem to set up what comes next. And most importantly, it gives the feeling that we've entered the final phase of the series, but we are not at the conclusion yet. So in this video, we will carefully analyze the ending of Chapter 5. We will look at the most obvious clues, the details that may have gone unnoticed, and the theories we can already build about Chapter 6. Because at this point it's clear, Chapter 5 is not the final chapter of Poppy Playtime. Before we start, as always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like because it really helps the channel. And if you're not subscribed, you can subscribe so you don't miss the next videos about Poppy Playtime and all the upcoming news. With that said, let's start with the ending of Chapter 5 and what is probably the most important confirmation it gave us.
Later, your conscience finally getting the better of you. May you descend into the dark and the dust. Welcome home.
I thought you were gone. Poppy, I couldn't. He took her. Kissy is... I don't know. I don't... Look, I told you I wasn't a hero.
Well now, this is a rather interesting turn of events.
I showed you a summary of what happens at the end of Chapter 5, because the ending is the most important part to start from. The first obvious thing is that the ending of Chapter 5 is not a definitive ending. There is no real closure to the story. There isn't that moment that makes you think, okay, it's over. On the contrary, the game stops at a point that leaves space for what comes next. This means the series is not finished yet, and even if there isn't an explicit message saying Chapter 6 is coming, the ending of Chapter 5 works as an indirect confirmation. because if it had been the final chapter, the ending would have been built differently, with a more definitive conclusion. As a result, we can say that Chapter 6 was, in fact, already confirmed by Chapter 5. Then there are concrete elements that all point in the same direction. The most important one involves the prototype. In the ending, we clearly see that the prototype survived. It was not defeated, it was not eliminated, and it was not stopped in a definitive way. It remains an active presence, still free to move and influence what will happen next. We need to remember one fundamental thing. The prototype is the main antagonist of the entire series. As long as the prototype is still there, the story cannot be considered finished. It wouldn't make sense to end the series with the main villain still in play, still mysterious, and with so many unanswered questions. With this first glance, we can say that the ending of Chapter 5 does not close the main conflict, it pushes it forward. It shows that we have reached a crucial phase, but not the final one. So between the open ending, the threats still present, and the prototype continuing to exist, all the clues lead in the same direction. Chapter 6 is not only possible, it is the natural continuation of what we have seen. And at this point, the real question is not whether Chapter 6 will happen, but what will happen in Chapter 6. Now, let's analyze another detail from the ending of Chapter 5. What I'm showing on screen right now is the actual final scene of the game. At the end, we activate a PC, but when the computer turns on, we don't see a normal screen. We see Dr. Sawyer's eye. This image confirms something very important. Dr. Sawyer is still alive. We defeated him in Chapter 4. The story made us believe his arc was finished, that he had been stopped for good, but Chapter 5 overturns that idea and tells us that somehow he survived. Now the question is no longer whether he is alive, but how he managed to survive. Some theories begin. One of the most interesting possibilities is that his memory remained active somewhere in a server. We have to remember that Dr. Sawyer was no longer simply human. He had been transformed into a powerful PC. He still had a human brain, but at the same time, he was connected to a huge network. Servers, Playtime's internal computers, internal systems, and especially the factory cameras. He was, in a way, distributed across Playtime's technological infrastructure. This opens a very unsettling scenario, because if his consciousness was connected to that network, then it's possible he never truly disappeared. Maybe the brain was defeated, but the mind wasn't. Maybe his memory was transferred, copied, or simply remained active somewhere inside the factory systems. And once again, this works as a confirmation of Chapter 6, because when one of the main antagonists survives, the story cannot end. It means there is still something to tell, something to resolve, and most importantly, a conflict that hasn't reached its final stage yet. What are your theories about this ending? Tell me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. We will see in the next video dedicated to Poppy Playtime. Bye bye and see you soon.